Hi, I'm Dr. Schwartz Reichl. My career began in music education where I learned the importance of a key change, a shift, in the tonal center of a piece of music, often used to inject energy or produce significance. Eventually, I realized the impact of making key changes in all areas of my life and the desire to help others do the same. Making key changes can be difficult. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I do like to pose questions for reflection and offer actionable key changes for us to attempt in both our working and living situations. Together, we can unlock our greatest potential in collaboration with those we love, serve, and lead. Let's discover how we can grow together by making key changes. Last week's episode took me back to my roots as a band director, but the message reached far beyond music and even beyond education. It offered ways to think about or rethink how we lead, how we evaluate, how we help others grow, and ultimately, how we influence, whether that's in education, business, or just everyday life. And that idea of influence has been on my mind a lot lately. I was recently asked a simple question. How do you influence someone? It made me pause because when I think about the people who have influenced me most over the last several years, it hasn't always been people doing exactly what I do. More often, it's been people operating at a high level in completely different fields, such as engineering, finance, teaching, personal development, real estate, and medicine. Different paths, same impact. And when I really thought about why they influenced me, it wasn't because they told me what to do. It's because they made me think. They asked questions, or they lived in a way that became a question. Questions like, how would this make a younger version of you feel? What if this were your child? Would this still be acceptable? If the roles were reversed, how would you experience this? Influence is all about encouraging reflection. It's about creating just enough pause for someone to see things from a different angle, maybe one they hadn't considered before. Not forcing change, but opening the door to it. So if you're thinking, I know something needs to change in my life, job, business, or company, but I'm not sure where to start, let me tell you, you're not alone. Most meaningful change doesn't begin with a perfectly mapped out plan. It starts with awareness. It starts with that quiet but persistent feeling that something could be better. And here's the key change. Small, intentional shifts compound. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. In fact, trying to do that usually backfires. What you do need is clarity on what matters most right now. Ask yourself, what is one key change that would make everything else easier or more effective? This could apply to your home, your job, or your organization. Now, let's connect this back to influence, especially for those of you in leadership roles or growing into them. Executive leadership isn't just about setting direction or making high-level decisions. At its core, it's about shaping how people think, creating an environment where reflection is normal, where questions are valued, and where growth is expected. The strongest leaders don't just provide answers. They ask better questions, and they leverage diverse perspectives to explore those answers. Instead of telling someone what to fix, they help them recognize it. Instead of forcing alignment, they build understanding. Because here's the reality. People rarely commit to change that's imposed on them, but they will commit to change they arrive at themselves. My husband is the smartest person I know. Along with earning a PhD in electrical engineering, he spends his days solving problems for a massive defense company. I remember the first week of the pandemic when he was suddenly forced to work from home after spending most of his time in a lab. He was on a call with several other engineers and managers. He was calm, patient, and listening. But he knew the answer, and I wasn't sure why he didn't just chime in with the solution. After a few days of listening to him work, I finally asked him why he didn't just offer the solution. He smiled and said, "No one likes a know-it-all." But then he shared his reasoning. He'd rather pose questions and encourage the team he is leading to come to conclusions on their own. It offers them a sense of ownership. It guides them through a learning process rather than a lecture. I must have responded with something like, "Yeah, but it sounds like you don't know the answer." For John, it's not about valuing who comes up with the solution. I'm using air quotes here, of course. It's about valuing the solution. When I hear him speak, it's never demeaning. It's never do this. Instead, it's let's try this. Or what if we? Or have we tried? He understands that influence is all about encouraging reflection. He shaped that skill in me. One of the biggest mistakes executives make is treating change like an announcement instead of a process. They introduce an initiative, communicate it once or twice, and expect it to stick, oftentimes without even modeling it themselves. But if influence is rooted in reflection, then change requires repetition. It requires conversation. It requires creating space for people to process, question, and connect the dots for themselves. Great executive leaders understand that people don't resist change. They resist uncertainty. So your role isn't just to provide direction, it's to reduce that uncertainty, to consistently reinforce the why, to connect decisions to values, to make the path forward feel not just clear, but meaningful. And just as important, listening. Because the higher you go in a role, team, or company, the easier it is to lose touch with what people are actually experiencing. Influence isn't a one-way conversation. If you want people to reflect, you have to be willing to hear what comes back. At the end of the day, making key changes, whether personal or organizational, isn't about control. It's about alignment. Alignment between what you say and what you do, between what you value and what you reward, and between where you are now and where you're trying to go. Because momentum doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from being willing to think differently, to question with intention, and then to act together. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it, particularly a colleague, manager, executive, friend, or family member. Share it at your work, in your professional network, or somehow in your community. Check out the show notes for upcoming events. There's also a link to subscribe to the Making Key Changes weekly newsletter. Our community includes thousands of people from many different professions and areas of life. And both the podcast and newsletter are about making key changes in our lives alongside those we love, serve, and lead. If you're planning a conference, professional development session, or workshop and want to guide your people toward confident, compassionate leadership, I'd love to partner with you. How are we making key changes to consider how influence is all about encouraging reflection? Thanks for listening. If you haven't done so yet, please consider rating and reviewing the Making Key Changes podcast on the Apple Podcast app. If you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with others and joining me again next week. In my coming episodes, I'll discuss topics that are most passionate to me, along with things I've been researching or areas of my life I have changed or want to change. You can learn more about me on my website, makingkeychanges.com. Feel free to message me through there or reach out on social media. I'd love to hear from you and learn about what key changes you hope to make.